口の中にもう一人誰かいるぞ。
お前は違う。
Dorohedoro is the coolest anime I've seen in a long time. It opens with the scene I just showed you, a man with a lizard head chomping down on a masked man's face. It's a good hook, and it captures the insanity that is Dorohedoro's story. The lizard-headed man is our main character, appropriately named Kaimon. He and his friend Nikaido are trying to solve the mystery of what happened to his head. Years earlier, Nikaido found him in an alleyway. He had no memories or clue who transformed his head. I say who because Kaimon lives in a world where magic is very real. There are two worlds, one full of humans and the other full of magic users, who look human but can cast magic through a black smoke they emit from their bodies. Some of these sorcerers travel to the human world to practice their magic on the helpless humans. Nikaido and Kaimon live in Hole, one of the sorcerer's favorite practice spots. If a magic user is killed, their magic is dispelled, so Kaimon and Nikaido spend their free time hunting down, interrogating, and murdering sorcerers.
もういらん。
That's the basic setup, but this story isn't just about two human beings fighting against nameless magic users. It's more about the mystery behind Kaimon's head situation, along with the lives of the sorcerers he meets along the way. Most of the cast is actually from the magic world. You see, the man they kill in the first scene is a member of a powerful magic user crime family. It's here we meet M, the leader of the family and a wielder of fearsome mushroom magic. That's right, mushroom magic. Sounds kinda lame at first, but being able to turn everything into mushrooms is actually kind of scary. The In family clashes with Kaimon and Nikaido when In sends his cleaners to stop them from killing more sorcerers. The cleaners are Shin, a hammer-wielding maniac with magic that lets him slice people up without killing them, and the best character ever imagined, Noi. She's like 7 feet tall, nearly unkillable, loves murder, and is somehow incredibly charming.
ゆっくり夕飯だ。
やった
ぶちまきやがって。だから安物の袋はダメだって言ったろ。
先輩。
責任取って一人で片付けろ。
Series creator Q Hayashida is actually really good at that. Having characters with charming electric personalities who are also capable of gruesome violence. Seriously, these two characters are like fan favorites and are shipped together constantly. I think she pulls this off by giving their violence a greater context within their world. The more you learn about the history between magic users and humans, powerful magic users and weak ones, the more you understand where the violence is coming from. That's not to say Hayashida is making any moral judgment on these characters. In fact, it's the opposite. She presents the morally dubious situations in the story in a very matter-of-fact way, spending just as much time developing and giving context to the In family as she does Kaimon and Nikaido. She leaves the moral judgment up to the viewer, which is kind of a relief to me. When it comes to creating characters with so much class disparity, things can get really weird if you learn partway through that the writer has sketchy politics. That's not to say that anime should never dive into politics, but if a show gets it wrong, it can really sour things for viewers. The show's sense of humor and overall presentation do a lot of work keeping the tone from getting too dark. A man will get gruesomely torn apart by magic only to end up as a giant meat pie. The fields where humans would kill sorcerers en masse are now used as a baseball field. There's a giant cockroach man with sneakers. Dorohedoro is grimy as hell, but it's far from depressing. It revels in the grime. It sets up a world full of misery and pain and goes on to have as much fun with it as possible. The whole show is structured in a way to more effectively show you some wild shit. And that brings us to the impeccable world building in Dorohedoro. The story drip feeds you information about the world in a way that you always have enough context to be engaged, but things are kept vague enough for you to still have questions, and for you to imagine for yourself what else might be going on in the world. Keep in mind, good world building to me means building a world that is interesting and engaging. I know there are a lot of people out there who really focus on the logistics of fantasy worlds, but I'm not usually that kind of person. To use an overdone example, the polyjuice potion in Harry Potter, which lets you assume the likeness of any person, completely undetected, kind of breaks the logistics of the world. Identity fraud should be a much bigger problem in Harry Potter, but I also don't really care. Things like this don't take me out of the story much. I can pretty easily imagine some reason polyjuice potion isn't used more. Rare ingredients, long-term side effects, something like that. One example from Dorohedoro comes from its third episode during the Day of the Living Dead, a day where, once a year, anyone in Hull who has been killed by a sorcerer comes back as a zombie. A whole festival has been built up around it, with volunteers collecting the metal plates that are placed in the neck of any buried magic victim. These plates can be turned into the town priests for fabulous prizes. Nikaido wants to win the meat grinder this year. Really fun setup, but if you think about it, it would make a lot more sense if the citizens of Hull just cremated their dead instead of burying them. Luckily, Hayashida has built a world where you can easily explain away things like this. For example, the priest being there lead me to think that there might be some religious significance to the whole ordeal. Maybe burial is the only acceptable thing to do with a dead body in Hull. Maybe the priests have enforced this practice so the community feels like it needs them when the zombies come each year. We never find out much about their religion, but they make the world feel full.
Oi, 坊さんたちの足元を見ろよ、二階堂。着物に草履じゃ逃げらんねえもんな。
The sorcerer's world has an even better setup. Since everyone has a unique personal magic, from transformation to invisibility to time travel, the show is free to get really weird without taking you out of the experience. The sorcerer world is in an appropriately chaotic state considering it's full of rabid magicians. Of course, problems with world building need to be looked at in a case-by-case basis. The overall presentation of a story can seriously impact how easy it is to accept inconsistencies. Sometimes fantasy mechanics make so little sense it does hurt the experience for me. Sometimes the mechanics can make sense but just not work well for the story. But not every world has to be logically airtight for me to enjoy it. And some mechanics can be logical but not make sense for what the story is going for. Our real world is full of contradictions, so I can handle some in my fantasy as well. Dorohedoro actually did cross a line that I usually feel pretty strongly about, but the plot and tone of the show made it not bother me. And that line is resurrection. I often don't like the ability for characters to come back to life. It tends to take away the stakes during scenes where our protagonists are in danger. Perhaps the most egregious example of this for me was in Game of Thrones. The show spent several seasons establishing that any character could die if they made a mistake, and it was one of the things that made the story so compelling to so many people. But the show had Lord Beric, who could come back whenever he felt like it, and later in season 6, a much more important character is brought back from the dead. It felt really out of place for me. For a show that put so much effort into having characters face consequences for their actions, giving certain characters multiple lives felt like a bad call. Dorohedoro is even more bold with its resurrection. Characters come back to life or from the brink of death all the time. There's an adorable cat creature who can bring people back on a whim, and Noi's healing magic can heal any injury outside of complete death. Shin and Noi's fighting style even uses this power to let Shin just power through attacks with Noi healing any damage he takes.
披露できそうな相手だぜ。
いつでもいいですよ。
You're rarely worried for the safety of these characters, and trust me, it only happens more in the manga. But strangely, I don't mind any of this. If anything, I think it can work to the show's benefit. It introduces these healing mechanics so early on that they don't feel like they came out of nowhere. They feel like world building. The sorcerer's world is a place where death is a little less permanent, and injuries can be healed in seconds if you know the right people. It explains why their society is so cavalier with their violence. In the sorcerer's world, death isn't necessarily the end, so go crazy. It also lets the show up the violence a good bit. You won't see many characters die, but your favorite characters will absolutely be maimed and broken in spectacular fashion. So that takes us to the visuals, which are really what got me started on the anime in the first place. Seeing how unique everything looked in the promo material piqued my interest immediately. The character design is pretty different than what you'd see in, well, any other anime I've seen. I love that they all have masks. It works from a world-building perspective. They carry a cultural significance and can sometimes even impact a sorcerer's powers. And it gives us a ton of visual variety. They range from silly to unsettling and usually fit the characters' personalities pretty well. But what really steals the show for me is the background work. The world is simultaneously grimy and colorful. It feels like a psychedelic carnival ride. And like a sketchy carnival where the games are rigged and you're worried about someone stealing your wallet. As an aside, the world in the manga feels even more gross. Hayashida's art is incredible when it comes to drawing oppressive environments and, of course, gore. But I won't get into the manga too much, but I will link some wonderful videos about it in the description. Dorohedoro's action is quick and decisive. You won't see many long, drawn-out battles here. Things tend to be over in 1 or 2 blows. If you miss your swing, you'll catch a hammer to the brain. The fighting can feel weirdly grounded that way. Now, I do have to bring up the elephant in the room. Dorohedoro uses CGI for its characters. I know, it scared me too, but to be fair, it doesn't use it for every scene, and it's actually pretty good. The character models themselves still look great, and there are only a few scenes where the animation feels stiff. And those scenes are usually just when characters are walking around, never in any action scenes. Honestly, my biggest issue with it was how framey it feels. I don't know why, but at some points you could really feel the low frame rate of the CGI. But I got used to it pretty quick. I would of course prefer the whole show was animated more traditionally, but all studios have time constraints, so please don't let the presence of CG keep you from at least trying the show out. And that about wraps it up for Dorohedoro. I had a great time watching it, and I hope we get another season. It should be out on Netflix in the US this month, so give it a watch. Oh, also it has like 6 different ending songs. Those, along with its opening, are a strong 10. Transition. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I've been doing a lot of videos about pretty violent topics recently, so for the next one I think we'll relax a little bit and do a video about the Iraq War. Thanks for watching.
Hey,
Hey, you little piss baby. You think you're so fucking cool, huh? You think you're so fucking tough? You talk a lot of big game for someone with such a small truck. Oh, look at those arms. Your arms look so fucking cute. They look like little cigarettes. I bet I could smoke you. I could roast you. And then you'd love it. You text me I love you. And then I'd fucking ghost you.